I'm Emma Matthews, 34, single mom to my amazing 8-year-old Lily. Last Saturday at our neighborhood playground changed everything when the Richardsons' son hit my daughter and knocked her off the swing. What happened next still makes my blood boil. They demanded my child apologize for hogging the equipment. I never expected to become the neighborhood crusader, but when no one protects your child, you find strength you never knew existed. Before I tell you how they came to regret everything just 2 days later, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to stand up against bullying, both from children and their parents. Connecticut suburbs in autumn were always beautiful, but this year they felt especially meaningful as Lily and I settled into our new home on Maple Street. As an elementary school counselor for over 10 years, I thought I'd seen every type of parent-child dynamic possible. Working with children was my passion, and helping families navigate difficult behaviors was literally my job description. But nothing in my professional experience prepared me for what we'd face in our own neighborhood. 3 years ago, my ex-husband decided that family life wasn't exciting enough and left us for his 20-something administrative assistant. The divorce was painful, but I was determined to create stability for Lily. She was only 5 then, with bright blue eyes that seemed to absorb everything around her, and long brown hair that she insisted on wearing in 2 braids. Sensitive and thoughtful, Lily had always been cautious in new situations, taking time to observe before joining in. The divorce had made her even more reserved, which broke my heart. After renting for 2 years, I finally saved enough for a down payment on a modest 3-bedroom in an established neighborhood with excellent schools. Moving in February meant starting mid-year, but Lily adjusted well to her new 3rd-grade class, slowly making friends and even joining the school science club. By summer, things were looking up. I felt proud watching her confidence grow, and our weekend pancake traditions and Thursday movie nights helped maintain our special bond through all the changes. Our new neighborhood seemed picture-perfect with its tree-lined streets and well-maintained homes. Most families had lived there for years, creating tight-knit social circles that weren't always easy to penetrate. Still, several neighbors brought welcome baskets, and we received invitations to summer barbecues. Lily particularly loved the community playground just 2 blocks from our house, where neighborhood children gathered almost daily. That's where we first met the Richardsons. Thomas Richardson was a senior investment banker who commuted to New York City, serving on several local boards, including the school board. His wife Veronica ran a high-end interior design business catering to wealthy clients throughout the county. They lived in the largest house on the block, a renovated colonial with perfectly manicured grounds and a 3-car garage. Their son Jackson was 9, a year older than Lily, with expensive clothes and the latest gadgets. From our first interaction, something felt off about their family dynamic. Jackson interrupted adults constantly without correction. He demanded rather than asked, and his parents seemed to find his behavior amusing rather than concerning. "He's just assertive," Thomas once told another parent within my earshot. "That's how you get ahead in this world." During a neighborhood cookout in July, I watched Jackson deliberately trip a younger child who was running past him. When the little boy cried, Veronica quickly handed him a popsicle and whispered something to his mother, who nervously laughed it off. I caught Thomas slipping Jackson a high five later when they thought no one was looking. Despite these warning signs, I encouraged Lily to be friendly. "Everyone deserves a chance," I told her, hoping my professional assessment might be overly critical. Perhaps Jackson just needed positive peer influences. Besides, as newcomers, we were still establishing ourselves in the community. Several times during the summer, I noticed small incidents. Jackson excluding certain kids from games, making fun of a boy's secondhand bicycle, or hoarding playground equipment. When Lily mentioned that Jackson had called her backpack babyish at the bus stop, I suggested some strategies for dealing with mean comments, but didn't make a big deal of it. Kids will be kids, I thought. Part of growing up is learning to navigate difficult personalities. What I didn't realize then was how my professional tendency to see the best in every child, combined with my desire to fit into our new community, was blinding me to a situation that would soon explode. Looking back, I should have trusted my instincts earlier, but hindsight offers clarity we rarely have in the moment, and the moment that would test everything I believed about parenting, community, and justice was rapidly approaching. That Saturday in early October started perfectly. The morning air had that crisp autumn feel, with leaves beginning to turn brilliant shades of orange and red. Lily had finished her homework Friday night, so we enjoyed a leisurely breakfast before heading to the playground. She wore her favorite purple jacket and had recently mastered pumping her legs on the swing without my help, a small victory she was eager to practice. The community playground was modern and well-maintained, funded by the neighborhood association. It featured climbing structures, slides, a sandbox area, and 4 swings, 2 regular and 2 bucket swings for toddlers. Around 10:30, Lily ran ahead to claim one of the regular swings while I chatted briefly with Mrs. Garcia, whose grandson was playing in the sandbox. For about 20 minutes, Lily swung happily, occasionally calling for me to watch how high she could go. The playground had maybe 8 other children that morning, mostly younger kids with their parents. I sat on a nearby bench, enjoying watching her play independently while I responded to a few work emails on my phone. The Richardsons arrived around 11, making an entrance as always. Thomas wore designer sunglasses and carried a coffee from the expensive cafe across town. Veronica was impeccably dressed in yoga attire that probably cost more than my entire workout wardrobe. Jackson sprinted ahead toward the playground equipment, his eyes immediately locking onto the swings. I watched as he surveyed the 4 swings. One was broken with caution tape around it. The 2 toddler swings were occupied by twins whose mother was carefully pushing them, and Lily was on the remaining regular swing. Without hesitation, Jackson marched directly toward her. "I want that swing," I heard him demand loudly. Lily slowed her swinging slightly. "I just got on a little while ago," she said, her voice polite but smaller than usual. "Maybe we could take turns? I can count to 100 and then let you have it." Jackson's face flushed. "No. I want it now. This is my playground anyway. My dad pays more taxes than your mom." From my position, I could see Lily's expression fall. She looked toward me uncertainly. I started to stand, intending to mediate the situation when Jackson dramatically turned toward his parents. "Dad, this girl won't give me the swing," he called out. Thomas lowered his phone and glanced over without much interest. "Just tell her to move, son. Be assertive." Emboldened, Jackson turned back to Lily. "You heard him! Get off now!" Lily gripped the swing chains tighter. "But I was here first. My mom says we need to take turns and be fair." That's when Jackson's expression changed from entitlement to something uglier. "Your mom doesn't make the rules here," he sneered. He grabbed the chain of Lily's swing and jerked it hard to the side. Lily, unprepared for the sudden movement, lost her grip. The swing twisted violently, throwing her sideways, onto the ground. I heard her cry of surprise and pain as she landed hard on her hands and knees. I was on my feet instantly, rushing toward my daughter. Through my peripheral vision, I saw other parents turning toward the commotion. By the time I reached Lily, she was sitting up, tears streaming down her face. Her palms were scraped raw, tiny pebbles embedded in the skin, and her right knee was already developing an angry purple bruise visible through her torn leggings. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" I knelt beside her, quickly assessing the damage while trying to keep my voice calm. Before Lily could answer, Jackson had already claimed the swing, pumping his legs triumphantly. Thomas and Veronica strolled over, looking irritated rather than concerned. "What happened here?" Thomas asked with the tone of someone being inconvenienced. "Your son pushed my daughter off the swing," I said, trying to keep my voice steady as I helped Lily to her feet. "She's hurt." Veronica pursed her lips. I'm sure it was just a misunderstanding. Boys play rough sometimes. This wasn't playing, I countered, feeling heat rise in my chest. He deliberately pushed her because she wouldn't give up the swing immediately. Thomas crossed his arms. Jackson said she wouldn't share. Kids need to learn to share. She offered to take turns, I explained, disbelief growing at their response. She was politely explaining that she'd just gotten on the swing when your son grabbed it and pushed her off. Veronica's eyes narrowed. Are you calling our son a liar? I felt Lily trembling against me and my protective instincts surged. I'm saying your son hurt my daughter instead of waiting his turn. She's bleeding. Thomas looked down at Lily dismissively. Looks like just a scrape to me. Kids get those all the time. What happened next still shocks me when I think about it. Thomas turned to my tearful daughter and said, You know, young lady, if you had just given Jackson the swing when he asked, none of this would have happened. I think you owe him an apology for hogging the equipment. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The audacity of suggesting my injured child should apologize to the boy who had just assaulted her left me momentarily speechless. Lily looked up at me in confusion, tears still wet on her cheeks. Excuse me? I finally managed, my voice unnaturally quiet. You heard me, Thomas continued, seemingly oblivious to the tension around us. Jackson is younger. She's bigger and should know better than to monopolize the swing. Jackson is actually a year older than Lily, I corrected automatically, teacher instincts kicking in despite my shock. And regardless, what you're suggesting is completely inappropriate. I looked around, noticing that several parents were watching uncomfortably but saying nothing. Mrs. Garcia caught my eye with a sympathetic glance but remained silent. Come on, Lily, I said, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Let's go home and clean up those scrapes. As we turned to leave, Veronica called after us. You really should teach your daughter better playground etiquette. This is why communities have rules. I didn't respond, focusing instead on my quietly sobbing daughter. As we walked the 2 blocks home, Lily's small voice broke the silence. Mom, did I do something wrong? She asked, wiping her nose with her sleeve. The question broke my heart and ignited something deep within me. Absolutely not, sweetheart, I assured her. You did nothing wrong. You were polite and tried to be fair. What happened wasn't okay, and it wasn't your fault. As we reached our front porch, I knew this wasn't over. The scratch on Lily's knee might heal quickly, but the injury to her sense of justice and safety would take much longer to mend, unless I did something about it. That evening, our cozy living room became a sanctuary as I treated Lily's wounds, both physical and emotional. After carefully cleaning the gravel from her palms and applying antibiotic cream to her scrapes, I made her favorite comfort food, grilled cheese with tomato soup. We ate together on the couch, breaking our usual kitchen table-only rule while watching a Disney movie. The simple routine seemed to calm her, but I noticed how she winced when moving her bruised knee and how unusually quiet she remained. When bedtime came, Lily asked a question that revealed the deeper impact of the day's events. Mom, why did that boy's parents think I should say sorry when I didn't do anything wrong? I sat on the edge of her bed, carefully considering my response. This was one of those pivotal parenting moments that could shape her understanding of justice and self-worth. Some people, I began slowly, think that avoiding conflict is more important than standing up for what's right. And some parents have trouble seeing when their children make mistakes. But you always tell me when I make mistakes, Lily pointed out, pulling her stuffed rabbit closer. That's because I love you enough to help you grow into the best person you can be, I explained. Real love means teaching kindness and responsibility, not just making excuses. After tucking her in, I closed her bedroom door and finally allowed the tears of anger and frustration I'd been holding back all day to surface. I paced our living room, replaying the incident in my mind, second-guessing my response. Should I have been more confrontational? Less? What message had my reaction sent to Lily? The memories triggered a flashback to my own childhood, specifically to 5th grade when Melissa Harmon and her friends had excluded me from lunch tables and birthday parties for an entire semester. My parents had advised me to ignore it and focus on the friends who were nice to me. While well-intentioned, their passive approach had left me feeling unsupported and somehow at fault. I'd promised myself that if I ever had children, I would never minimize their experiences that way. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was my sister Rachel calling from Boston. "How's my favorite niece?" she asked cheerfully. When I recounted the playground incident, her typical good humor vanished. "That's completely unacceptable, Emma. Please tell me you're not letting this slide." "I don't know what to do," I admitted. "I don't want to overreact, but I also can't let Lily think this kind of behavior is normal or acceptable." "Document everything," Rachel advised firmly. "Take photos of her injuries now. Write down exactly what happened while it's fresh, and note who was there. Trust me on this." Following her advice, I photographed Lily's scraped palms and the bruise on her knee, which had darkened to an angry purple-blue. I wrote a detailed account of the incident, including direct quotes from Thomas and Veronica Richardson. The process was cathartic, but left me wide awake long after midnight, mentally cycling through possible approaches. By morning, Lily's physical pain had somewhat subsided, but a new issue emerged at breakfast. When I mentioned perhaps visiting a different playground later that day, she stiffened. "Can we just stay home instead?" she asked, pushing her cereal around the bowl. "I don't really feel like playing outside today." The implications hit me hard. One incident had made my confident child afraid of a place she'd previously loved. This wasn't just about a playground dispute anymore. It was about Lily's fundamental sense of safety in our new community. "Sweetheart," I said gently. "What happened yesterday wasn't your fault, and you have every right to enjoy the playground just like any other kid. But what if Jackson comes back? What if his dad yells at me again?" Her questions revealed the heart of her fear, not just of another child's aggression, but of adult authority figures who had failed to protect her. As a school counselor, I'd seen how quickly children could internalize such experiences, adapting their behavior to avoid conflict rather than expecting justice. "I promise you," I said, meeting her eyes directly, "I'm going to make sure this doesn't happen again. Sometimes adults make mistakes too, and we need to help them understand that." While Lily spent the afternoon with Mrs. Garcia's granddaughter next door, I began researching. First, I reviewed our neighborhood association bylaws, finding a clear section on community playground conduct that emphasized sharing and prohibiting physical aggression. Next, I looked into our school district's anti-bullying policy, discovering that Thomas Richardson had actually been on the committee that drafted it 3 years earlier. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here was a man publicly advocating for anti-bullying measures while privately encouraging his son's aggressive behavior. The hypocrisy fueled my determination. Around 4 o'clock, my phone pinged with a text message from Megan Collins, a mother I recognized from school pickup whose son had been at the playground. "Just checking if Lily's okay after yesterday," she wrote. "That was really unfair how they treated her. Sam said Jackson has pushed other kids." Before, too, the text confirmed what I'd suspected. This wasn't an isolated incident, but a pattern. I thanked Megan for her concern and asked if she'd be willing to share any other incidents she knew about. Her response came quickly. "Absolutely. Several parents have had issues with that family." By Sunday evening, I had formulated the beginnings of a plan. I would start by directly addressing the Richardsons once more, giving them the opportunity to acknowledge their son's behavior and take appropriate action. If that failed, I would escalate through proper channels: the neighborhood association, the school, and, if necessary, the broader community. As I helped Lily prepare for school Monday morning, I provided extra reassurance. If anything makes you uncomfortable today, you tell your teacher right away, okay? And remember, standing up for yourself isn't the same as being mean. She nodded solemnly. And it's okay to say no when someone isn't being fair? Absolutely, I confirmed, seeing a small spark of her usual confidence returning. Being kind doesn't mean letting people hurt you. As we walked to the bus stop, I spotted several other parents I'd been in contact with over the weekend. Their sympathetic nods and protective glances toward Lily told me I wasn't alone in this battle. Something was shifting in our community, and I was determined to make it shift toward justice. Monday morning's school drop-off was tense. The elementary school buzzing with activity as children rushed toward the building and parents called last-minute reminders about lunchboxes and after-school plans. I spotted Veronica Richardson in her sleek silver Mercedes dropping off Jackson at the curb. Our eyes met briefly as I walked Lily to the entrance, but she quickly looked away, busying herself with her phone as if I didn't exist. "Have a wonderful day, sweetheart," I told Lily, giving her an extra tight hug. "Remember what we talked about." She nodded solemnly. "I know, Mom. I'll tell Miss Peterson if anything happens." All day at the counseling center where I worked, I found myself distracted. Between sessions with students, I checked my phone repeatedly, half expecting a call from Lily's teacher. I even called the school office during my lunch break, just to make sure everything was okay. The secretary assured me that nothing unusual had been reported. By 3 o'clock, I was waiting anxiously in the parent pickup line. When Lily emerged from the building, her expression was subdued but not tearful, a relief after yesterday's events. She climbed into the car and buckled her seatbelt before speaking. "Jackson told everyone at lunch that I cried like a baby at the playground," she said quietly, staring at her hands. "He said his dad thinks you're one of those helicopter moms who makes excuses for their kids." The casual cruelty of the comment, clearly repeated from adult conversations, ignited a new wave of anger within me. Using a child to spread malicious gossip about another parent was beyond inappropriate. "Did you tell Ms. Peterson?" I asked, keeping my voice calm despite my internal fury. Lily nodded. "She made him sit at a different table and said she'd talk to him after lunch. But then at recess, he told Tyler and Marcus not to play with me because I'm a tattletale." That was the final straw. This had escalated from a playground incident to deliberate social isolation, a classic bullying tactic that I'd counseled countless families through, but never expected to experience with my own child. "You did exactly the right thing," I assured her, squeezing her hand. "Ms. Peterson needed to know, and you were brave to tell her." After dinner, I made a decision. Direct communication was always the first appropriate step in conflict resolution, something I emphasized in my professional role daily. The Richardsons deserved one more opportunity to address their son's behavior before I took more formal action. "Lily, Mrs. Garcia said she'd love to have you over to see her new puppies while I run a quick errand," I told her, already having arranged this with our neighbor. "Would that be okay?" After settling Lily next door, I drove the 3 blocks to the Richardsons' imposing colonial. My heart pounded as I rang their doorbell, but I reminded myself that this conversation was necessary, not just for Lily, but potentially for other children affected by Jackson's unchecked behavior. Thomas answered the door in business casual attire, surprise registering on his face when he saw me standing on his porch. "Mrs. Matthews," he said coolly, "this is unexpected. I need to speak with you and your wife about what happened this weekend and about Jackson's comments to Lily at school today," I stated firmly. He hesitated before reluctantly stepping back. "Veronica," he called over his shoulder, "we have a visitor." Veronica appeared from their expansive kitchen, wine glass in hand. Her expression shifted from curiosity to defensiveness when she saw me. "I hope this won't take long," she said. "We're about to have dinner." "I'll be brief," I promised, declining their half-hearted invitation to sit. I'm here because Jackson has continued to target Lily at school today, telling other children not to play with her and spreading hurtful comments that he clearly heard from adults. Thomas crossed his arms. Kids have disagreements all the time. I'm sure you're overreacting. Physical assault and orchestrated social exclusion aren't disagreements, I countered. They're bullying behaviors that violate both school policy and neighborhood association rules. Veronica's expression hardened. Are you threatening us? I'm asking you, parent to parent, to address your son's behavior appropriately before this escalates further, I clarified. Jackson needs to understand that pushing others and organizing social exclusion are unacceptable, and he needs to apologize to Lily. Our son doesn't need to apologize for standing up for himself, Thomas replied dismissively. If anything, your daughter needs to learn that the world doesn't revolve around her. Standing up for himself? I repeated incredulously. He physically pushed my daughter off a swing because she wouldn't immediately give him what he wanted. How is that? Standing up for himself? Veronica set her wineglass down with a sharp click. You know, Emma, you might be new here, but you should understand that Thomas is very well connected in this community. He's on the school board, the neighborhood association, and the country club committee. People listen to him. The implied threat wasn't subtle. They were suggesting that challenging them could have social or even professional consequences for Lily and me. I'm well aware of Thomas's positions, I replied evenly, including his role in drafting the school district's anti-bullying policy, the same policy that Jackson's behavior clearly violates. That landed like a stone dropping in still water. Thomas's expression flickered briefly before hardening. I think you should leave now, he said coldly, and I suggest you consider very carefully before making accusations about our family. People who create problems in this community often find themselves isolated. I maintained eye contact with him. I'm not creating problems, Thomas. I'm addressing one. There's a difference. Walking back to my car, I felt a strange mix of adrenaline and disappointment. I'd hoped, perhaps naively, that they might recognize the seriousness of the situation when confronted directly. Instead, they'd escalated to threats, confirming that more formal intervention would be necessary. Back home, after tucking Lily into bed, I called my friend Diane, who worked at the local newspaper. While I had no intention of turning this into a public spectacle, I wanted to understand what community resources might be available. The paper wouldn't cover a playground dispute, Diane confirmed, but the timing is interesting. There's a quarterly neighborhood association meeting this Wednesday where residents can bring up community concerns. Next, I contacted my law school friend Michael, who specialized in family law. Document everything, he advised, echoing my sister's earlier recommendation. Take photographs of injuries, save any communications, note dates and times of incidents, and gather statements from witnesses if possible. Through the neighborhood social media group, I discovered several other parents had experienced similar issues with Jackson, but had hesitated to speak up given Thomas's influence. 3 agreed to meet with me the following day to share their experiences. That night, I created a detailed timeline of events, including photos of Lily's injuries, notes from our conversation with the Richardsons, and Jackson's subsequent behavior at school. By morning, my strategic response was taking shape, not as revenge, but as a necessary intervention for my daughter's well-being and potentially for the community's. As I drifted off to sleep, I realized that sometimes advocating for your child means becoming someone you never expected to be. A warrior for what's right, even when it's uncomfortable. Tomorrow would bring the next phase of our journey, and I was ready. Tuesday morning dawned with renewed purpose. After dropping Lily at school with extra reassurance, I met with 3 other parents at a coffee shop away from our neighborhood to ensure privacy. What emerged from our conversation was disturbing, a clear pattern of aggressive behavior from Jackson that had gone unaddressed for over a year. My son came home crying last spring after Jackson destroyed his science project right before the fair. shared Amanda Wilson, mother of a fourth grader. When I approached Veronica, she said boys will be boys and suggested my son's project must have been in the way. Keith Donovan, father of twin girls in second grade, had a similar story. Jackson pushed my daughter Zoe off the monkey bars last summer, claiming it was his turn. When she fell and sprained her wrist, Thomas Richardson offered to pay the urgent care bill if we kept things between us. It felt like a bribe to stay quiet. The third parent, Sophia Chen, revealed that her son had stopped wanting to attend school events because of Jackson's taunting about his speech impediment. We've complained to the school twice, but nothing changes. I think they're afraid of Thomas's position on the board. These accounts confirmed my suspicions. The Richardsons had systematically used their social and institutional power to shield their son from consequences, creating an environment where his behavior could escalate, unchecked. More troubling was the community's tacit acceptance of this dynamic out of fear or misplaced respect for Thomas's positions of authority. The neighborhood association meeting tomorrow night is our chance, I explained, sharing what I'd learned about the agenda. There's a section for community concerns where residents can speak for 3 minutes each. If we coordinate our statements, we can establish a pattern without seeming like we're targeting one family. We agreed on a strategy. Each parent would speak about their specific experience without initially naming Jackson, focusing instead on the need for playground safety and consistent enforcement of existing rules. I would go last, connecting these seemingly isolated incidents into a demonstrable pattern and proposing concrete solutions. After our meeting, I headed to the elementary school. I'd scheduled an appointment with Principal Winters, a straightforward administrator who'd been supportive during Lily's mid-year transfer. "Mrs. Matthews," she greeted me warmly, "what can I do for you today?" I explained the playground incident and Jackson's subsequent behavior at school, providing the documentation I'd gathered. Principal Winters listened attentively, her expression growing concerned. "I appreciate you bringing this to my attention directly," she said when I finished. "We take bullying very seriously here." "I know you do," I acknowledged. "That's why I was surprised to learn that several previous incidents involving Jackson Richardson haven't resulted in intervention, despite your excellent anti-bullying policy." She shifted uncomfortably. "Student disciplinary matters are confidential, as you know from your own work in education." "I respect that," I assured her. "I'm not asking for details about other cases. I'm simply pointing out that there seems to be a pattern that hasn't been addressed effectively, which has now impacted my daughter." Principal Winters nodded slowly. "I'll look into this immediately. We'll have a conference with Jackson's parents and appropriate monitoring will be implemented. I'd also like to check in with Lily today, with your permission." "Of course," I agreed, relieved by her responsiveness. "And I should mention that the neighborhood association will be discussing playground safety at tomorrow night's meeting. It might be valuable to have a school representative there, given that many incidents have involved students." She raised an eyebrow at the subtle pressure but nodded. "I'll see if our community liaison can attend." Back at home, I called my sister Rachel, who had offered to drive down from Boston for moral support. "I'll be there by tomorrow afternoon," she promised. "Have you prepared what you're going to say at the meeting?" I spent the evening crafting my presentation, carefully balancing factual evidence with emotional impact. The goal wasn't to publicly shame the Richardsons, but to create accountability and safety for all children in our community. I practiced in front of the bathroom mirror, timing myself to stay within the 3-minute limit while making every word count. When Lily came home from school, I was relieved to hear that Principal Winters had indeed checked in with her, and that Jackson had been assigned to a different lunch table and recess group. "Ms. Peterson told me that standing up for yourself and others is really important," Lily reported, her expression lighter than it had been in days. She said I was brave. That night, I received an unexpected email from Eleanor Blackwell, grandmother to 3 children in the neighborhood and widow of the former town mayor. Her message was brief, but powerful. I've watched the Richardson boys' behavior for some time and am disturbed by the community's reluctance to address it. Count on my support tomorrow evening. Eleanor's backing was significant. As a respected elder in the community whose family had lived here for generations, her opinion carried weight that transcended Thomas Richardson's relatively recent positions of authority. Wednesday morning, I received confirmation that the school's community liaison would indeed attend the neighborhood meeting. The pieces were falling into place for a coordinated response that would be difficult to dismiss. Rachel arrived that afternoon, bringing her characteristic energy and unwavering support. "You've got this, Em," she assured me as we reviewed my presentation one final time. "You're not just standing up for Lily. You're standing up for every kid who's been bullied while adults looked the other way." As we prepared to leave for the meeting, Lily gave me a tight hug. "I'm proud of you, Mom," she whispered. Those 5 words gave me all the courage I needed. Whatever happened tonight, my daughter was learning that injustice should be confronted, not accommodated, and that lesson would serve her long after this particular conflict was resolved. The Oak Ridge Community Center buzzed with unusual energy that Wednesday evening. Typically, neighborhood association meetings drew perhaps 15 residents, mostly retirees with time on their hands and long-term homeowners concerned about property values. Tonight, nearly 50 people filled the meeting room, a clear indication that word had spread about the planned discussion. Thomas and Veronica Richardson arrived just before the 7 o'clock start time, appearing momentarily, taken aback by the unexpected turnout. They took seats in the front row, Thomas nodding confidently to several board members as if reassuring them of his control over whatever might unfold. The meeting began with standard business, budget updates, landscaping committee reports, and planning for the holiday decoration contest. I sat quietly with Rachel beside me, reviewing my notes one final time while the other parents we'd coordinated with were scattered strategically throughout the room. Finally, Association President Howard Mendez reached the community concerns portion of the agenda. "We have several residents who've requested time to speak about playground safety," he announced. Each speaker has 3 minutes. First up is Amanda Wilson. Amanda approached the podium calmly, her prepared statement focusing on the need for clear playground rules and adult supervision. Without naming Jackson specifically, she described how her son's science project had been deliberately destroyed by another child and how the incident had been dismissed when reported. Keith Donovan followed, detailing his daughter's monkey bars injury and emphasizing the community's responsibility to maintain a safe environment for all children. Sophia Chen spoke eloquently about verbal bullying and its impact on children's emotional well-being. I watched the Richardsons as each parent spoke. While neither was explicitly naming their son, the sideways glances from other community members made it increasingly obvious who was being discussed. Veronica's posture stiffened with each speaker, while Thomas maintained a dismissive expression that gradually looked more forced. When my turn came, I approached the podium with steady determination, placing my documentation folder beside the microphone. "Good evening," I began. "My name is Emma Matthews. I moved to this community 6 months ago with my 8-year-old daughter Lily, drawn by the excellent schools and family-friendly reputation. I'm here tonight because that reputation is at risk due to a pattern of behavior that has gone unaddressed for too long." I proceeded to describe Saturday's playground incident in precise detail, including photographs of Lily's injuries displayed on my tablet for the board members to see. "What happened to my daughter wasn't an isolated incident," I continued. "As we've heard tonight, multiple children have experienced similar treatment. The common factor in each case is not just one child's aggressive behavior, but the community's reluctance to enforce our own stated values and rules." From my folder, I extracted a copy of the Neighborhood Association bylaws, highlighted in relevant sections. Our own community guidelines state clearly that all shared facilities must be used with respect for others' safety and enjoyment. They further specify that physical aggression or deliberate damage to property will result in restricted access to community amenities. I looked directly at Thomas Richardson. Additionally, our school district's anti-bullying policy, which board member Thomas Richardson helped draft, defines bullying as unwanted aggressive behavior that involves a power imbalance and is repeated over time. This definition precisely describes what multiple children in our community have experienced. A murmur ran through the audience. Thomas began to rise, but Howard gestured for him to wait until I finished. I've confirmed with the playground committee that our community playground has surveillance cameras for security purposes, I continued. I formally request that the footage from Saturday between 10 a.m. and noon be reviewed by the board to verify the accounts presented tonight. This was a calculated risk. I wasn't certain the cameras were actually functioning, but the Richardsons wouldn't know that either. Finally, I said, I'm not here seeking punishment, but protection and accountability. I propose 3 specific actions. First, that our playground rules be clearly posted and consistently enforced. Second, that the association coordinate with the school on a unified approach to addressing bullying behavior. And third, that we implement a community mediation process for resolving conflicts between families. As I returned to my seat, Thomas Richardson strode to the podium without being called. "This is ridiculous," he said, his voice tight with anger. "My family is being publicly ambushed over normal childhood disagreements. As a board member—" "Thomas," Howard interrupted calmly, "if you wish to respond, you'll need to wait your turn like everyone else." The reprimand, though mild, seemed to shock Thomas. His face flushed as he realized his privileged position wasn't automatically granting him priority. Howard turned to the audience. "Before we continue, I'd like to acknowledge that Rebecca Torres, from the school district's community outreach office, is here tonight. Rebecca, would you like to add anything at this point?" Rebecca stood, her professional demeanor lending weight to her words. "Principal Winters asked me to attend after meeting with Mrs. Matthews yesterday. The school takes these concerns seriously and is already implementing increased supervision and conflict resolution training. We're also reviewing all previous incident reports to identify patterns that may have been missed. This public acknowledgement that the school was already taking action effectively validated our concerns before the neighborhood association had even voted on a response." When Thomas was finally recognized to speak, his typical composure had crumbled. "This is a witch hunt," he declared. "My son is being demonized for normal assertive behavior. If some children are too sensitive for rough-and-tumble play, perhaps they should stay home instead of trying to change the rules for everyone else." The room fell silent at his words, which only emphasized the entitlement mentality that had enabled the situation to develop. Eleanor Blackwell's hand went up, and Howard quickly recognized her. The elderly woman stood slowly, commanding attention without raising her voice. "I've lived in this community for 67 years, she began. "My late husband served as mayor. My children and grandchildren grew up here, and I've seen generations of children play together on our playground. What Mrs. Matthews has described is not normal assertive behavior or rough-and-tumble play. It's bullying, plain and simple, and it has no place in Oak Ridge." Her moral authority was unmistakable, and I saw several board members nodding in agreement. Howard called for a vote on my proposed actions. The first 2 passed unanimously, while the third, regarding community mediation, passed with only 2 abstentions. Thomas and Veronica did not participate in the vote, having gathered their belongings and exited the meeting before it concluded, their hasty departure noticed by everyone. After the meeting, numerous residents approached me with words of support and additional stories they hadn't felt comfortable sharing publicly. The school liaison, Rebecca, confirmed that a formal conference with the Richardsons had been scheduled for Friday morning, and that Jackson would be participating in the school's restorative justice program. A local reporter who had attended the meeting asked if I would be willing to be interviewed for a story about community approaches to bullying prevention. While I declined to discuss specific incidents involving minors, I agreed to speak generally about the importance of clear, standards and consistent enforcement. As Rachel and I walked home, she squeezed my shoulder. "You did it, Em. You actually changed things." "We all did," I corrected her. "It took everyone speaking up together to make a difference." When we got home, I found Lily still awake despite the late hour. "How did it go?" she asked anxiously. "It went really well," I told her honestly. "A lot of people agreed that what happened was wrong, and they're going to make sure the playground is safer for everyone." Her smile was worth every moment of stress and preparation. "So I can go back to the swings?" "Absolutely," I promised. "And this time, everyone will know the rules." As I tucked her in, I realized we had reached a turning point, not just in addressing one child's bullying behavior, but in shifting a community's willingness to confront uncomfortable truths and stand up for its stated values. The real work of healing and change was just beginning, but tonight had cracked open the door to possibility. Friday afternoon brought unexpected news. Principal Winters called to inform me that following the school's conference with the Richardsons that morning, Thomas had requested a temporary leave of absence from the school board, citing personal reasons. The coincidence with our community meeting couldn't have been clearer, though she diplomatically avoided making that connection explicit. "The school is implementing several new measures," she explained. "We're expanding our social-emotional learning curriculum, increasing supervision at recess, and establishing a peer mediation program. Jackson will be participating in individual counseling sessions with our school psychologist twice weekly." These changes represented significant progress, not just for Lily's situation, but for all children who might have silently endured similar treatment. The rapid response suggested that our coordinated approach had applied precisely the right pressure at the right points in the system. Saturday morning, Lily and I walked to the community playground together. New laminated signs listing playground rules had already been posted at the entrance, including clear guidelines about taking turns and prohibitions against pushing or excluding others. A volunteer parent was present, wearing a playground monitor badge, part of the new rotation system the neighborhood association had implemented immediately. Lily approached the swings hesitantly at first, but soon was pumping her legs confidently, her face brightening with each arc higher. Watching her reclaim this simple childhood joy filled me with profound gratitude for the community that had finally rallied around its most vulnerable members. Sunday afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. I opened the door to find Veronica Richardson standing on my porch alone, her typically perfect appearance slightly disheveled, her expression uncomfortable but determined. "May I come in?" she asked quietly. "I'd like to talk." Surprised but curious, I invited her into our living room. She perched awkwardly on the edge of the sofa, declining my offer of tea. "I owe you and Lily an apology," she began, the words seeming difficult for her. "What Jackson did was wrong, and our response was even worse. There's no excuse for how we handled it." Her unexpected candor momentarily left me speechless. "Thomas and I have been," she hesitated, "going through some difficult times in our marriage. It's not an excuse, but I think we've been so focused on our own problems that we've been overlooking serious issues with Jackson's behavior." She explained that Thomas's aggressive defense of their son had been partly motivated by his own father's harsh criticism throughout his childhood. He swung too far in the opposite direction, making excuses instead of setting boundaries. I went along with it because it was easier than fighting about it. The glimpse into their family dynamics didn't excuse their behavior, but helped me understand it better. Parents often recreate or react against their own childhood experiences, sometimes with unintended consequences. "Jackson has started seeing a therapist," Veronica continued. "And Thomas and I are in counseling too. We have a lot to work through, but we're committed to helping our son develop better relationship skills." She looked down at her hands. "I was wondering if, when everyone feels ready, we might arrange a supervised playdate for Jackson and Lily." We'd be there the entire time, and if Lily's uncomfortable at any point, it ends immediately. The therapist suggested it might be helpful for Jackson to practice appropriate social interaction in a structured setting. The request showed more insight than I'd expected from Veronica. "I'd need to discuss it with Lily first," I replied, honestly. "Her feelings have to come first in this situation." Veronica nodded. "Of course, just please consider it. Jackson needs to learn how to make amends, not just say empty apologies." After she left, I reflected on the courage it must have taken for her to come alone, without Thomas's dominant presence, to acknowledge their mistakes so directly. People were capable of growth and change when given the right motivation and support. Something I believed professionally but sometimes struggled to remember in personal conflicts. When I discussed Veronica's visit with Lily that evening, her response surprised me. "I think maybe Jackson doesn't know how to be nice to people," she said thoughtfully. "Maybe nobody taught him." The compassion in her assessment reminded me why children often manage forgiveness better than adults. They see the person behind the behavior, the potential for change rather than the pattern of the past. "Would you be willing to try a play date if I'm there the whole time?" I asked her. She considered this seriously. "Maybe not right away, but someday, yeah." The following weekend, the neighborhood association hosted a community playdate at the Ari's playground, with volunteers organizing cooperative games and serving lemonade and cookies. I noticed Jackson attending with Veronica, Thomas conspicuously absent. While Jackson still showed moments of impatience, Veronica was actively guiding him, redirecting inappropriate behavior immediately rather than ignoring or excusing it. Throughout the next month, small but significant changes continued. Principal Winters asked if I would serve on the school's newly formed Parent Advisory Committee on Social Climate. Several neighborhood parents began consulting me informally about handling conflicts between children, drawing on my counseling background in a way that felt like genuine community building rather than professional obligation. Most importantly, Lily blossomed. The confidence that had been briefly shaken began to return, stronger for having been tested. One afternoon at the playground, I watched with quiet pride as she intervened when an older child tried to exclude a kindergartner from the climbing structure. "Everyone gets a turn," she said firmly. "That's the rule." The older child looked around, noticed the monitoring parent watching approvingly, and grudgingly made space. The little kindergartner gave Lily a grateful smile before scrambling up. The ladder. 2 months after the incident, Jackson and Lily participated in their first supervised playdate, not at either of our homes, but at a neutral community center activity. While not exactly friendly, they managed to work cooperatively on a craft project with appropriate adult guidance. It was a small step, but in the right direction. Standing up for my daughter had unexpectedly become about something larger, helping create a community where children learned accountability rather than entitlement, compassion rather than dominance. The process hadn't been easy or comfortable, but the outcome had rippled outward in ways I never anticipated. As parents, we often wonder if we're making the right choices. Will confrontation create more problems than it solves? Is it better to let some things go to keep the peace? What I learned through this experience was that the answer depends not on avoiding conflict, but on approaching it with integrity, evidence, and a focus on positive change rather than punishment. Sometimes, the most powerful lessons we teach our children come not from what we tell them, but from what we show them through our actions. By refusing to accept injustice, by insisting on accountability without vengeance, and by working to repair rather than merely punish, we demonstrate values that shape their understanding of how to move through the world. Have you ever had to stand up against bullying, either for yourself or someone else? How did you handle it? And what did you learn from the experience? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please subscribe and share with someone who might need encouragement to speak up. Remember, one voice can inspire others, and together we can create communities where every child feels safe and valued. Thank you for listening to my story.